Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. Today I've got Jan from Quiver Management. So welcome, Jan.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, listen, you're fascinating as a person. You do a whole load of things. And I remember us talking many moons ago
It has
when
been
we
a
were
long
looking to
time.
take creation out of a charitable situation, and
Yes.
you were advising us then, and we're still here and we're still going.
Yeah.
So
Excellent. Well
thank you.
done.
Thank you. So Jan, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what Quiver Management is to start off with, and then we'll go and explore your journey.
Okay. So Quiver Management is basically a coaching business and coaching training business, leadership training as well as some consultancy. But if you look at the core of it, it is about coaching and training leaders in particular around using a coaching leadership style with their team members.
And so as a business, how long you been doing that for?
Since 2002.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So yes, we're coming up to a big anniversary soon.
Yeah, well done. Awesome. So was it, like the whole coaching and consulting and stuff? I mean, most people go on a journey before that. So when you were at school, let's say, is that what you was that the aspiration? Is that what you wanted to do? What was the goal?
No, that shift over to that world came very late, actually. No,
Right, okay.
Where did I start? I've always been somebody who enjoyed working. Actually, it's
Yeah.
probably a bit of work ethics from my parents. So I had my first jobs when I was 6 years old.
Ooh.
And here's a little test for you there.
Okay.
I was a vulcanizer. Was my first job. Do you know what that is?
A what?
A vulcanizer.
Vulcanizer. Sounds very Star Trekky, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But no, but it's not in that space.
A vulcanizer. Something to do with birds?
No,
Okay.
no, you're actually to do with tires.
Tires.
So I was living in a small village, and it had basically a tire company. But if you remember, well, you may not remember this. I am a little bit older than you, I think.
Only just.
There was a time when you would actually put a rubber back onto your tire
Oh.
to save money. So rather than buy a new tire, you would take it in and you would get it sort of threaded with
Okay.
rubber on it. So that's vulcanizing. And they had a
Right.
little business there locally where they would people would come with their cars. You will take the wheel off, and you will take the tire off, and then it will go in and get sort of resurfaced and then put back on. So I was helping getting the tires on and off, and just doing small handyman jobs in that little sort of
Wow.
workshop.
And what did you learn from that? Because obviously, when you get older, you look back at, like, I remember working for people, and you just focus on you turning up doing the job.
Yeah.
But then obviously when you run a business, you go, oh my gosh, they were doing this. What was that business like? Can you remember?
I think I just did it for the enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't even for the money. I will get some pocket money, I'm sure,
Yeah,
along the
yeah.
way. But I think it sets me on the road to doing lots of different things.
Okay.
So I've done many other jobs. When I was a boy there, I would work at a local farm for quite a number of years. So really enjoyed working with the animals, and there was a big dairy farm, so a lot of cows.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that. I've been a librarian for
have
some
you?
years. What else can I think of? I've just always had jobs. I didn't sit still.
Very varied jobs.
Very, very, very jobs. I just threw my hands into almost anything I can be allowed to do.
Yeah.
And then probably the shift, which there is a connection from when we then go decades further into my life, and that was I was actually a semi-professional musician for
Were
a
you?
number of years. And that started by starting to play the electric organ, the keyboards.
Yeah.
And in Denmark, there back then in particular was a strong tradition for actually having a musician that came to the family parties, anniversaries, weddings, and I decided to start to put my heart into that. So that's more almost entertainment
Wow.
rather than the musician element. You're actually there. There'll be 80 to 100 plus people there
Yeah.
for a big party, and I would be playing along during the dinner. There will be sing along. There will be sort of entertainment with the
Yeah,
music in the
nice.
background, and then they would dance afterwards, and I would be playing for that. So I did that right through sort of late school years, university years, and to a large extent that helped me sort of get through and pay for
Yeah.
my university years. But what it did was really, I really, really enjoyed going out meeting 80 new people plus type of thing, and just get to connect with them.
And you know what, and that lesson, if you fast forward, like to your career now, whatever, ultimately it's about growing businesses is about talking to strangers. So you don't lose those skills, right?
No.
So even though you're not playing with piano or whatever,
No.
you've got that confidence to engage with people that you've never met before.
Yes.
So
Even as a young person, which I think was
it's incredible.
really good for me. And so am I extrovert? Partly, certainly, but I think it's a balance, a little bit of each. But certainly I had the confidence to go and talk to people, whatever rank or file they are in the organization that I work in.
Yeah, because I think as I've got older, I think I've got, I love being around people all the time, but I've really started to value that unplugging, that alone time to recharge as I've got older.
Yes.
Before I just keep going, and then I hit a wall and I got to start again. But I think as I've got older, I've recognized the power of reflection, the power of thinking it through and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Whereas before, I think, and this is probably a new thing because it's like my leaning is always a futurist. So it's always what's next. So when people say, "Hey, you done really well," I was like, "Yeah, but I'm nowhere near where I want to be."
Oh, yeah.
But I've learned now a little bit about living in the present a bit more.
Celebrate the victories along the way as well, isn't it? And enjoy how far you moved.
Exactly, and I think you don't do that if you don't reflect, right? So so then it's like you're in this perpetual thing of never succeeding. Whereas I think if you do stop and pause and look back, you go, okay, we've done a lot so far, which is great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're obviously doing the music stuff because I've seen how powerful that particular thing is in terms of bringing people together, like in Liverpool. So I think they've got it in a lot of places, but they have like a piano set up and it's just in the middle of a shopping centre, and then you just get random people start playing the piano, and then by the end of it, everyone's watching,
gathering along.
because you hear it.
It draws you in. Yeah.
So we went out many years ago. We went out to watch Liverpool in the pre-season, and we were there like the day before. So we went to the Liverpool One Centre, and obviously the Beatles is quite a big thing. And these guys, two kids, got on both sat at opposite ends, so that's like a bench, and they just started playing Beatles songs.
Okay.
And by the end of it, the whole bank
They
is
would be
full
popular,
of people.
wouldn't they?
yeah, exactly. And I was just like, wow, isn't it amazing how music can bring so many people together? So from that, then, what did your career look like?
Well, so finishing my school years, I went into the engineering route. Right. So I completed a bachelor engineering, electronics and mechatronics, it was called. So it's both mechanical and electronics, and that was actually what brought me to England eventually. Yeah, I enjoyed that. I loved the studying of that subject. Yeah. It just seemed to fall so easily for me. So in many ways, it was like when you have sort of 3 to 4 years of studying, well, that just was time that flowed, and cool. Things worked well. And then at the end of that course, towards the end of the degree, I had to do 3 months work practice, and I managed to wangle getting to England to do that, to the northeast of England, actually. So when I landed, it was on a ferry from Esbjerg to Newcastle upon Tyne.
Yep.
And when I landed on the shores of the Tyne, they were not speaking the Queen's English. I had been taught in school, so I had to now learn English in a whole different way.
From Newcastle?
Yeah, from Newcastle, yes. Well, I certainly built on it. I worked in a factory with about 400 Geordie lasses.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine when you walk out on the shop floor, there's a lot of banter.
Yeah.
And at first I had to understand what they were saying, and secondly, of course, being part of it, giving something back as well. Yeah. And it was so good. So I ended up being there for 6 years.
Okay.
And I actually ended up meeting my now ex-wife, but we met there. Yeah. And went to Denmark for a few years. So I went from working in a factory with very sort of operational environment into an R&D. Yeah. But what had happened in that journey, even in the UK in those 6 years, was sort of very quickly got into leadership and management. So I realized the technical side, which sort of felt easy for me in some ways, I wasn't using it.
Yeah. Okay.
But not that it was negative. It was just I started to really enjoy the human connection again. It was working with people. It was getting people motivated, inspired. Yeah. Across this big factory that I really enjoyed. So by the end of the 6 years in Newcastle, I had about 40 people in my department responsible for everything technical, but it was the people side that really was it's sort of driving me forward.
It's quite. I mean, funny enough, me and Claire are going to Copenhagen in a few weeks.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So we're going to go and visit it. There's a friend of ours launching a network there, and we're going to go. What would Geordie's are known for their warmth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the main culture shock? The difference between the two countries? I'm not knowing too much about Danish culture. I know Swedish culture a little bit, which are pretty much standoffish and leave me alone type of people. So
Yeah.
the Geordie culture is very like, where you from? Everyone wants to hug and
Yeah.
talk and whatever. So what was it like comparing the two worlds for yourself?
Well, so there's probably a couple of different elements. So there's in the private side, you can argue then in Denmark, there's a different culture around going out.
Yeah.
You don't go out very often. It was very expensive to go out. Just prices on alcohol and eating out was very expensive. Whereas coming to the Northeast, we were out very regularly. 3 or 4 times a week would be out having a couple of beers. That was just so different from Denmark.
Yeah.
But a lot of warmth. But Denmark is also known in some ways a little bit like the southern, like the Mediterranean of Scandinavia, the more warm side, hygge, if you may know the term, which is sort of that coziness, family. But it is very much often really in the home you're doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's sort of in the private. It was interesting as well on the business side of it, that in Denmark there's much more of a somewhat consensus culture. You invite opinions from people. The managing director will speak to people in the shop floor, and vice versa. A lot more of a non-hierarchical structure.
No, it's good.
A lot more of less of a difference. And actually, I think that helped me because I felt it easy to connect with anything from the managing director in the factory to all the lasses and lads on the shop floor, which I think gave me a big advantage when we introduced change, which was just constant in the 90s. It was the days of lean and TQM and you can rattle a lot of abbreviation of a lot of change happening in the factory, certainly. But that was sort of my advantage. I think that was my strength, that I could talk to people.
So you can see that theme of you from playing the piano and engaging loads of people, that skill carrying its way through into what you're doing. So you're there, you're growing, you're learning, you move. Did you move into leadership then in terms of that role?
Yeah, right. So in UK, so I had about 40 people in my department by the time I left. Sort of towards late 30s, 27, 28.
Yeah.
Went to Denmark, had an R&D leadership job, so technical leadership.
Yeah.
But I was doing then an MBA on that journey, and decided I wanted to move a bit further away from the technical. I want to prove that I could do more the general management. I could move beyond that.
Yeah.
So I moved over to a company called Rockwool, which is sort of building insulation. A lot of people probably know the trade name, and had sort of more. There was some connection to the technical side, but I was really there to build businesses. Okay. So my job, I had a technical department for one of the divisions, but my job was really to try and build new businesses with all the technology and products that Rockwool had. Can we move into different sectors?
Right. Okay.
So Rockwool is building industry.
Yeah.
But the division I was in was horticulture. So it's basically huge greenhouses, and they were using these bats as growing media rather than insulation in walls.
Yeah.
So my job was to try and can we expand that further? So that would be into sound insulation under railway tracks. They had a division that was roof sealing bats, sort of hanging pretty ones that you would have hanging in rooms. Again, that was helping the sound environment. We had it on roof gardens. So in Germany then there was a rule that if you build a house, you had to replenish or recreate the environment you moved, and the easiest way to do that was to put a garden on your roof. Right. So we were sitting into that. So it was such a formative few years there on taking anything from almost just an idea, trying to get it to market, trying to build a business. And fundamentally, my job was done when we could go to the board and say, we think we have a viable business. Yeah. Let's put a management team together to take it on.
So you're almost like an incubator, like a startup incubator, pretty much. Yeah.
But what was really interesting was I was working in massive, big global companies, but also on that scale. So suddenly working on both scales of that. And that's a huge, valuable experience for the job I'm doing now, of course.
Exactly.
And then that job then led me to, I was offered marketing vice president in the US, so for the Americas fundamentally.
Yeah.
And in that role, my job was sort of to look at the market and saying, we had a big distributor, a really, really dominant distributor, and there was was a real sort of crunch point. Should we somehow work closer with that distributor, or should we try and say, actually, that's not for us, that relationship anymore? But we ended up acquiring them, and I was put in as CEO with a fairly clear brief over 2 to 3 years to turn it around, because it was in trouble, it wasn't making the money it should be, and then also find my replacement. So a CEO that was American, that felt that was needed.
Not a simple role.
No, it was hugely challenging. About 40% of people were laid off. Pretty much moved every distribution center we had. And again, that gave me really, really strong leadership experience, working 100%. As a CEO of a business for some years, turning it around, building a culture and the whole sort of operational structure that could start to make money again.
Wow. So what was the biggest shift? Did you remain connected to the people? Obviously, you're having to lay a lot of staff off, but like if you go back to your previous career where you could go from the top down to the bottom and talk to people, did you carry some of that stuff across to where you were as a CEO, or did you find yourself becoming more disconnected then?
I think I was connected to the business I was in at the time.
Right.
But looking back, when I started in the next shift, which was out of the sort of senior leadership roles in large organizations, I made some really clear mistake in not building my network. I did not stay connected with people that I had worked with, that I'd enjoyed working with. I just lost it. It was before Facebooks and MySpace, if you remember that, and those ones. So many, they were just lost, I found some of them along the way, but there are many I feel I wish I could find them again where they were.
It's funny, isn't it? Because like we take it for granted now. You've got LinkedIn, you've got Instagram, you've got Facebook. Funny enough, out of all the networks, the one that I used to use the most was Facebook. It's the one I use the least now. I spend more time on LinkedIn. Naturally.
That is for professionals, certainly for me as well.
But it is good where you meet someone now, and it's not necessarily the business card. It's that let's connect on LinkedIn. Which is again another shift. So I think in terms of collecting people for the journey, I think it's such an important thing to do. I mean, we hear that statement, don't you? Your net worth is your network, and I'm a massive advocate.
I just did not appreciate it. I definitely did. And also, so it also created a bit of an issue. So after we were away for some 6 years or 9 years actually away from the UK, came back, and my expectation was to look for another CEO role like it had in America.
Whereabouts in America were you?
So in New Jersey.
Okay.
So I actually lived along the shore, which is why you have such a weird accent now. I got sort of a Geordie accent. I got New Jersey, that twang they have, so Italian twang. There's all Italian that live. Exactly. And now I live down here in the Southwest, so it's a weird accent I got built up over the years.
Who and hours.
Exactly. So when I came back, and I didn't have a connection. I didn't have that network. I think that I would certainly encourage anybody who is starting to look at career shift, make sure that network is almost ready to help you. So I used, of course, usual headhunters and stuff like that. But then I had a real stroke of luck there, I could say in hindsight, because one, it wasn't that easy to find a CEO role coming from abroad, being Danish. I'm not saying they had necessarily barriers, but it wasn't. I didn't sort of come easily. But I fell into and meeting somebody who was a great consultant and had helped build up one of the leading consultancies in Scandinavia. And he was now in London to sort of set up the international arm, but had actually decided to separate from them and start his own. And so he had this incredible consultancy experience, 15 plus years. He knew how to sell, deliver, build consultancies.
Right, okay.
And we decided to go together because he brought consultancies. I brought I've been there, done that, sleepless night, turnaround businesses, CEO role. So sort of my early 30s probably I was then. I could bring that in, mid 30s probably. It's better to have a little bit of experience, isn't it? To bring that in. So we had a really good combination. He could sell us in. He could get people sort of fired up. He was very charismatic, big arm movements, as we usually talked about. I was the one that was then hanging there to help the team drive a change over the long haul, over the years or more that needed to be done, working with each individual. And what was really interesting in that was, first of all, I thought, I'm never going to be a consultant. I didn't really like consultants because I've seen consultants in the big companies come in and think, they add no value. They just irritate the existing leaders, telling them all the things they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they have the answers.
Yeah.
It didn't feel right.
Yeah.
But then as I fell into it, I realized actually, first, there's different ways of doing it, and I believe we strongly we're doing it in a better way. But what was more interesting was I found I enjoyed standing in front of a group of senior managers in a change program, facilitating all the discussions and fundamentally giving them a great day of exploring whatever it is that needed to be explored strategically, implementation. Sometimes change programs where some of these people in the room were really nervous for their future. So you had all those sort of dynamics in the room.
And I think that's often the resistance, isn't it? The minute you hear the word consultant, you're like, oh, here we go.
Well, yes, but also that they were going through big changes. That was basically what the business was about. Change leadership is sort of the headline we had for us. So it was helping leaders drive change. So we will come in, we will facilitate workshops, we will coach the senior leaders around driving this change. But what I found was, man, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying standing in a room doing this.
Yeah.
And I think that was a connection back to the music days.
There you go.
Suddenly you meet 20 plus maybe new people you haven't met before, you have to build a connection with quickly, and under sometimes really fairly stressful condition for these people in the room. That's not much different from a wedding where the stressed bride and groom up there at the front and family, and I have to just make it a great day for them. Valuable day, a day that look back off and think that made a difference that day.
Yeah, so it's like, it's interesting how the connection between where you were to where you are, and then connecting with that enjoyment. So like the core things of what you enjoyed, ultimately that's what you enjoy of the job as well. So it's like what you did sort of like when you were younger manifests itself much later on in life, where you feel connected again.
Yes, I feel I'm in a space that both I enjoy doing, and I can make that difference and fulfill almost the role that makes the biggest difference in the room type of thing for me. And I can leave the room thinking that was a good day.
So just so it might be a little left field, but it for me, you're moving into roles that are quite big roles, coming from CEO, quite busy roles, and I guess there's a lot of time. Like you work hard, yeah.
Yep.
So where did the whole triathlon stuff? Where did you find time to do that in amongst all this? Was that an escape? Was it to wind down? Or how did that fit in the journey? Because you've got to be dedicated, right?
Yep.
So you've got this big change management, big roles, whatever, and then you're doing these. Most people would go for a run.
Yes, yeah. So probably throughout my life, and it's maybe part of almost the Danish culture, is sport was a big part of my youth. I wasn't particularly good at anything. I wasn't like a sports hero. I would be below average, probably, if I'm really truthful, in most things, in sports-wise. But I did sports pretty much every day. We would, the sports center was a really central part to the town that we lived in when I was a boy.
Yeah.
So we would cycle down, my brother and me, not necessarily doing the same thing, but we would cycle down to the sports center pretty much every day to do something.
Yeah.
And that would be badminton or handball, which is not a very UK sport, but it's big in Europe.
I played it.
You have tried it? So handball, there was badminton, a little bit of football, but it wasn't a great volleyball, some tennis as well. We would do something pretty much every day.
Wow.
And in the weekend, we might do tournaments of some sort. Or if there wasn't, we will, of course, sort of cycle down to the tennis courts and sneak in and start to play tennis all day for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
And that was just what we did. So that has followed me, I think, my whole life. It's really important to me to do sports.
Do you sneak into tennis courts now then?
No, I do pay for it, yes. I'm a member. But for me, it's probably, I know when I'm feeling fit and well, I'm also mentally much stronger. I can just deal with more. In the afternoons when everybody starts to slump in a workshop, I have to be the one with all the energy still there to keep it moving on the day, to catch when things are not going well, to have all that extra space in my head to be observant of what's happening in the room, what's the dynamic, while at the same time maybe engaged in conversation. That's really quite demanding.
Well, it's an interesting one because I think for me growing up, it's like I've always run sports in parallel in what I did, played football loads, run a football team. I couldn't just play it for the enjoyment. We had to win. Well, and so the problem there was that, it became a full-time job as well as the full-time entrepreneur journey. And eventually I laid that aside. And I think I've really struggled to find the replacement for that.
Right.
So it's like, go for a run. Yeah, I can do. It's boring.
But it's not intrinsic. You don't enjoy running.
Yeah.
You need a goal.
I need a ball to chase after or a person to take out.
So maybe it's a team side of it.
Yeah.
More than individual. Yeah, whereas I was more in the, it's definitely intrinsic. I just enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
But I do like to set myself a goal, because that one then happens, particularly if it's a big goal. And that was what I was probably finding when I was starting to move into triathlon, which was a bit of a sort of accidental. I had done some running, but I was not enjoying it much. I was finding that it was hurting my knees and joints and stuff. So I was sort of saying, why am I doing this? I'm not enjoying it anymore, which is probably true.
Which is where I got to, yeah.
But then I just saw where my girl was at school, that they had a triathlon organized with a swimming pool, and it was a very short one, sprint one, 400 meter swimming, 20k on the bike, 5k running. I looked at that, I thought, that looked interesting. I can swim 400 meters. I haven't done swimming for 20 odd years, but I think a little bit of training, I can get there. Running 5, I can definitely do that. Bike, I would need a bike then, won't I? But I grew up on a bike, so that must be easy to get a bike again. So that got me into it, and I loved it. It was such a thrill and the pace, and you were in and out of the pool, you were changing. It was really just an hour and a half of just full on adrenaline. I loved it. So on the night, I signed up for one twice the length.
Wow.
Did that some months later. That was horrific. It was a hailstorm, freak hailstorm in September. It was so cold. I came home for that. What's next? Yeah. And then I went to an Olympic length, and that was in Bradford-on-Avon, swimming in the river. Oof. I got so ill, I was in the hospital on drip afterwards because of the pollution of the river. But I still
Were you the only one? Was there a whole load?
I'm sure there'll be none. There was actually a warning sort of slip for us. If this happens to you, seek medical help immediately, type of thing. And that happened to me. It was horrific. I will not go into any details. I don't think that's suitable for the podcast. Yeah. But it still made me that was just a setback. So let's go for one step further. And eventually I landed at a half Ironman and then full Ironman. But what happened on that journey was I really loved having these goals, because suddenly I had to study, how do I become good at running? So if it hurts me running, I start to hurt about 10K, I need to fix that if I want to run further than 10K. Yeah. So I went on I took some advice from a great guy called Chris Kay in Bristol that really taught me how to run much more efficiently, less risk of damage. And suddenly it was flowing. And with the bike, I got a good bike, I got a proper setup. I started to study swimming and go to swimming lessons. And it was what could switch me off in the night as well. If my mind was really focused on all sorts of problems of whatever there might be, I could just almost switch into that mode. What is my plan for tomorrow when I'm running tomorrow or swimming tomorrow? And what am I going to focus on? How am I going to get better? And what about equipment I need to get or buy or something? That was a great way of just switching almost off.
But what I like about what you're talking about there is that, yes, you could argue it's a solo sport, but you then interacted with people to help you get better.
Yeah.
And I think often when we do solo sports, it's like, well, I just do it myself then. I'll run. Oh, it's boring. I don't know. Not once have I ever thought, and this is what's coming out, not once have I ever thought, you know what, I'll talk to someone about running. Mm-hmm. How can I enjoy it?
Yes.
Because my issue was when I started running, I used to get like really stiff calves. Mm-hmm. And I went and saw a sports physio, and they literally described my footballing. Did you go out, have fun with your mates, whatever, then come back the next day and then just come back and then play and then and not warm up more? Yeah. That's why your legs are like they are. Exactly. And he said he had a term for it. He says something 40s it was, because he says most men in their 40s suffer the same problem because they play football the same way. And I think it went from playing loads of sport at school, then playing sport to try and make it, then not making it, and then just doing it to have fun. And therefore the bad habits all creep in.
Yeah, and also I think for many, many people in their 30s, family life suddenly means you don't have time to do it and you don't prioritize it anymore.
Exactly.
So then you hopefully come back when the children gets a bit older, which was sort of probably a bit what happened for me when sort of mid-40s, when I really start to ramp up that
Yeah.
whole thing. And another thing that happened as well, which I think was in my mind not long ago. I was thinking about it. I joined a triathlon club, for the swimming, so
Yeah.
joined the swimming lessons. And one thing, it was on the very first day, I remember, it was first I saw this whole group. I'd never seen them before, I didn't know who it was. And the trainer called us athletes.
Wow.
That was just like I can feel it in my back of my
Yeah.
so that was like a moment thing. Oh, I never thought myself as an athlete. I always said below average. I'm not that good at very many things.
That's interesting.
But that word just suddenly, you start to just treat it as as an athlete. There's so much you can research and study, and I had books and studied them, and I went online, and I had plans, and I tried to see what worked for me and not. That's what a sort of professional athlete would do, isn't it? I think it really elevated the thinking about it. And I would say, as in terms of triathlon, I wouldn't necessarily end average. I think I end a bit better. But it's also because probably more than the average, I spend more time studying. I try to better myself. I try to improve my running techniques. I work on these things, so it's not just plodding as fast as I can. I try to be intelligent about it as well.
So you've got work and you've got your outlet. That's kind of the comparison, because I don't think most people value that enough. Like we're talking about living life on purpose and doing the job that you actually want and whatever. But there are things that you need to do to supplement that, like for instance, as you get older, it's like the energy thing that you talked about in the afternoon, where everyone's like, oh, I'm really tired. You're the one that's trying to keep everyone awake and keep everyone going. I think that could be even harder online,
Oh, absolutely.
It's
really
like,
you have to bring a lot of energy into that space. Yeah.
I mean, I remember during the pandemic where I was having back-to-back Zoom calls, like after 4 of them, I'm like, I'm exhausted. I've never been so tired. And then someone said to me, it was the most freeing thing. You can have that conversation on the phone. I was like, oh yeah. And what the science says is that because your brain not always understands that this person isn't there, so your brain's trying to work out, are they there or are they not there? And that in itself is making you tired. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So there I'd have 2 Zoom calls, and then I'd go for a walk and talk to people.
Yeah, and we certainly do that when we do our Zoom training. Some of them are whole days, some of them even over 2 days.
Yeah,
is to have long breaks and really encourage people, get away from the screen. Don't pick up your phone to sit and go through your emails. Go out, pet the dog, go for a walk, get the coffee, but get something so you're really away from the screen for half an hour and then come back. So that's almost double the time a coffee break would have than we would do if it's an in-person.
Yeah, so you obviously, you've got you're now in consultancy and whatever. So where did Quiver Management come into the journey? When was that thought of doing what you do? Is that
so? We actually set up Quiver Management, my ex-wife and me, right back in 2002. And it was more if I was going to do interim jobs, or if she was, then that could be a way of sort of putting through a company.
Yeah.
But then for the first 6 years, we really did it through that partnership with the experienced consultant I spoke about. But then part of the journey with that was, first of all, I learned a lot about selling coaching, selling myself, suddenly realizing the value and worth that you have and what pricing you need to set, and believing in yourself that we're worth it. That was quite a hard journey, but really, he taught me a lot of things. But then after about 6 years, he had moved back to Denmark with his family, and we sort of decided, let's split ways. I am more into the coaching side. I was getting a lot of courses around coaching. I had trained as a coach, and there was a technique we used a lot in the change programs. So that was the pivot from doing big change programs to focus on coaching.
Yeah.
But this is where I'm giving you a name of your podcast, purpose, comes in. It was really clear to me that a little frustration was that I was doing coaching, senior executives paying good money for me and others we could have in our team just to work with that sort of individuals.
Yeah.
What I really saw, well, why are those leaders not coaching their team members? Why are they not using those techniques to get the most out of their teams, to have high quality conversations, to develop their confidence and resourcefulness? If we could get that to work, that would be like a big difference at a whole different scale.
Absolutely.
So that's why from very early on, our purpose was really coaching at the heart of leadership. Leaders should be coaching.
Yeah.
And our little tagline is coaching leaders / leaders coaching. So we were coaching leaders. That's still big part of what we do. But really, we want leaders to start to coach their team members. So we we set up so we could run international recognized qualification programs for coaches, but specifically not really to create professional coaches. It was to create leaders who had the confidence, the competence, and even a certificate, so they had credibility to coach the team members. And that has really been the core of what Quiver Management was about, as we really focused on the Quiver Management brand and what we do.
Because I think, just explain, I mean, I obviously know, but just explain the difference between coaching and mentoring.
So they are fundamentally almost the same. In terms of the techniques, the skills, they're very similar. The real key difference is that a mentor brings experience in the field.
Yes.
A coach can coach, in principle, anybody in anything.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like a process. It's the right skills of listening, asking, questioning, building rapport, challenging in a way that's conducive, developing the other person. But you draw it out of the individual you're coaching. A mentor will typically have done something similar to what that mentee wants to work on, business owner, whatever it is. They've run a business before, or several, hopefully, and now they can share some of that experience. But the biggest challenge for many mentors is many of them become advisors. They tell the person how to do things. And that's often an excuse I hear from people who say, I'm coaching people, or well, maybe I'm more into mentoring. Well, as soon as I hear that, I know they're probably not even mentoring. No. Because a good mentor will actually fundamentally do most of the time coaching, and then there's an odd little perspective, angle, a little story, but only if it can help the other person. Not just to tell good war stories about how great you were when I ran a business type of thing. It is about, will this help the other person? So that's a difference. So we train both coaches and mentors.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that, from you talking about leadership in terms of leaders becoming coaches and working on the way down, it's funny how, like, I work in marketing, one of my roles, and it's very interesting that you talk about almost marketing takes on that we're advisors role, and you're not. Your job is to make them be the hero. So you often see, when I see a marketing company talk about how great they are from the get-go, I'll go, they don't understand marketing. They're literally just saying to me, it's all about you and you don't care, and one of the things that we teach in one of our workshops is essentially the Hollywood narrative. So the Hollywood narrative is that there's a hero in a story. He has an adversary, and then they got to overcome. And what was their plans? And that, and then somewhere in that story, they meet a figure like a Mr. Miyagi or an Obi-Wan Kenobi type, who then helps them achieve the same goal, but ultimately they do it differently with the plan of the Mr. Miyagi and whatever, and they help them through. And I say, you're not the hero. That your role's Mr. Miyagi. Your role's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes, you're the one that has to make them look great. Actually. And that's what, and that can be difficult both for coach and mentor, is that you might sit and do a great job, and particularly if you're doing a really great job, then the coachee at the end of it think, oh, what value did they really add? It was my idea. But that's the whole thing. We want them to leave thinking it was my idea, because that means they have ownership. And it was a real shift in my early coaching career, so to speak, when I was the initial part of consultancy, because I was working with a company, a big petrochemical company in London, and working with a division that was really struggling on the leadership side and making the money they should be. And I was giving good advice on all these changes. It was good advice. I was good at what I was doing. But every time I came back, they always came back with all the reasons that it didn't work.
Right. Okay.
Then I went on a coaching course, and I decided to try and use it. And it was like a light bulb moment. Because when my conversation changed to get them to answer it, maybe with a little sort of idea here and there from me, but they left owning the idea.
There you go.
Then, of course, when I saw them a week or two later, they came back with pride to tell me how well it's done and how well it worked, because now it was their idea. So if there was a little obstacle, something that was difficult along that little journey, they would try to overcome it rather than saying, it was because my consultant told me this, it's there, they don't understand this business, I have an excuse not to change.
Yeah.
And that was such a fundamental shift in my mindset. I could have more influence by coaching and making people leave with their idea than I could by trying to sell my idea to to try and convince them that I was right.
And absolutely, and I see that mistake happening all the time. And it's like, well, I haven't got time for it. I'll just use my experience, and we'll just tell them what to do, and they just got to go ahead and execute. But the point is, then the next problem comes. Guess who's they're looking for? They're looking for you to be their God and solve their problem.
And that's one of the key problems with managers that doesn't coach. And this is often actually what our coaching for senior leaders is about, is to take them out of that almost rut they're in. They're super busy. They're working excessive hours. And they are sometimes cheekily say they work below the pay grade.
Yeah.
They're basically doing the job that their team should be doing. But why are they doing that? Because they haven't spent time on the right thing, which is to build the team, develop them, grow them, give them the resources, capabilities, confidence to do it so they can solve the problems, while you as a leader can then start to focus on being more strategic, forward planning, developing, growing yourself, the team, the business. And that's 80% of the time we end up in this sort of a prioritization. What are you actually spending your time on, and what is making the biggest impact? How do you get out of working 60 hours a week? And this is one of the joys, of course. Once we can see that shift, it's not only the person I work with that is benefited, it's the whole team now see a difference.
So obviously you can't name names or situations or circumstances, but is there any journey that you look back on and go, I loved every minute of that the impact that we made was special? Can you share anything like that?
Well, so I can probably quite a few actually.
Okay, good.
But in terms of sharing it with names and stuff, no. But it's
no, I'm not expecting
probably more to. So because I worked on big change programs where we use coaching and facilitation and training and all sorts of instruments to help the team and see them go through the change. And they are really rewarding journeys because we are working not necessarily with everyone every time, but the ones we work through will start to shift their behavior, their thinking, being clear in the strategy. And suddenly there's hundreds, if not thousands of people that will see a shift. Something will start to change.
Yeah.
And then looking from the outside, it might be a year down the line before suddenly everybody starts to notice this company is doing things differently.
Yeah.
And it's not because we came with a better strategy, but I sat in the room and helped them think it through.
Yeah.
To try and dare them to dream if that was the problem, that they were constraining themselves. To get them to really articulate what does that vision look like? How can you get 1,000 or more people to also believe in it? How will you tell that storytelling to everybody? So we've gone away from the old days of a vision that was a carefully crafted short statement to pictures. Go out and show pictures, draw what it is that you want to, because if you cannot make it come alive for people, it's much, much harder for them to both remember it and for anything to change. And one of the things I talk about when we do big strategy development, or small ones for that matter, is if it's great to have a strategy and a vision, but if it doesn't change what people do day to day, if it's not clear on literally somebody out in the corner of the business have to make a priority call, if that hasn't changed their behavior and prioritization, it hasn't done anything. If they're still doing the same thing in the same way, then your vision, your great ideas hasn't actually shifted the business to whatever new direction or new ways of working that you envisage.
It's an interesting one. I've reading I don't know which book it was. I think it might be The Leadership Around You, John Maxwell, where he says, one of the best things as you as a leader needs to be able to do is that they run with a vision so hard and fast and get to what they need to get to, they almost forget you even exist. And when you decide to move on from that leadership role, they don't even thank you because they thought it was their idea. Yeah. And he said that's the highest form of leadership.
It is. Yeah.
That you don't get this.
But it takes a lot of humility.
Exactly.
Instead of being, I want to be in the middle, sort of big charisma. Because we also had a period in the 1890s, maybe into the noughties, of the hero leadership, the charismatic leader that drove forward. But a lot of research actually showed when they left, things fell to pieces because they were so central to driving that culture.
Well, you see
that's not leaving a legacy.
Well, and that's an interesting one because you see that in sport. You see that in sport a lot. Particularly in soccer. So I look at there was often the comparison between, let's say, Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United, and he was there for 25 years, big figure, left. I mean, they're apparently back now.
Are they apparently?
Yeah, but like they've won 2 games in a row and they're back now. I'm a Liverpool fan, so I'm pretty biased. But but the point of it is that they've struggled to replace, and Jurgen Klopp to some degree, same thing. Very charismatic leader left. We managed to get another manager that actually did win the Premier League, but now we're starting to see that the charismatic leader that is not there. He's not that type of person. And the club are like, oh, we need to go and get him back. Yeah. And I go, no. And when I look back then, and I go, well, who was probably one of the strongest leaders that replicated that? And I look back and there's a guy called Bill Shankly from the 60s. And what he did was so forward thinking, is that he was the manager, but he built what he called a boot room. They were his inner circle.
Yeah.
And when he finished, the next one took the job.
Yeah.
Then when he finished, the next one took the job.
And all the good methodologies and approaches and behaviors and stuff built in now has somebody to carry that culture approach further.
And that's how they had success, you see. Yeah. And that was my thing. It was like he recognized that we're running sprints and this leader can do that and the next leader. And Bill Shankly wasn't the most successful. I think it was the second one. He won everything in a very short period of time, over 9 years. And then he handed over to the next one. But the point of it is that he recognized that leadership is legacy, and it's like you might not lead forever, but you're more about empowering the next person to do what they want to do. And I think you're right. That hero leadership piece. I think so many people build a company that I'm the hero, whatever. But then really, can you build leaders? Yeah. Can you replicate?
What would happen the day you left? Will everything fall to pieces around? And that's actually in the situation for many leaders that
big time.
It's almost to hold on to it. And it doesn't help that in many companies, whoever is the best technical person becomes the team leader.
Yes.
Then they start to prove themselves as good as solving problems.
Yeah.
And then they become promoted up and up and up. And eventually they get to a point where actually it is no longer about your technical expertise and the fact that you can solve the problem better and faster than anybody else. Because now your job is to create a team that can solve the problems.
There you go.
Because otherwise you are focused on now and the problems you have now and you run ragged, and you'll create a culture that is what's rewarded.
Yeah.
Whereas that's not what builds great companies and grows businesses. And that's allowing them the space to start to do that.
Well, that's it. And I think, that's probably consumes a lot of my time and a lot of my thinking is, I'm trying to live life with a clean desk. How much can I get off my desk rather than put on the desk? And that's empowering leaders, because if I don't want to do it or haven't got the time to do it, then there is somebody that can do it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise I recruit and then give them that. But the point is, it can't be about me outworking everybody else.
No. And actually, if you're the cleverest person in the room as a senior leader,
it's not good.
Really?
Exactly.
Is anybody that clever? And actually, you should have, of course, always aim to have even cleverer people in your team.
Exactly. And I look at like Steve Jobs, for example. Steve Jobs, he's an amazing leader. But then if you read him out, what made Steve Jobs great was another guy called Johnny Ive. So Johnny Ive was the product guy. And when Steve Jobs come back, Steve went looking for the product guy and said, look, what have you got? Because what had happened, Apple had all these different grey boxes, and they were like the 2500, the 2800, the 3200, and everything just like a product about this long, and you couldn't tell what was what. And they brought the product guy in, and he said, well, I've got this idea, and it's a screen, and the computer's in the screen, and it's an iMac. We're calling it the iMac. Mm-hmm. And he said, great. So he literally shut the production down for everything, and they went that route. Mm. But what it was is that him as a leader was quite, the first time anyway, quite domineering, whatever. Yeah. But I think when he come back, he'd realised the power of collaboration. And Johnny Ive was behind much of the products that we're still using now, to be fair, like the iPad and the iPhone. And he literally killed the product line and just said, we're just going to be famous for this, and we do it in 5 colours. And that saved the company.
But also, as I recall, Steve Jobs was that he had a really clear vision on some principles that he kept sticking to. For example, simplicity, one button, and these things. Yeah. And the great thing about those is that's what a great leader is about. First, think out of head and think forward-looking, but then the values that you have as a business and the principles that you believe are what actually makes you successful. That's what you go out and preach, if I can use that word.
Yeah,
and make everybody believe in. because you believe in it, because that can be enduring. Those sort of principles that can you can leave and they can still remember those.
And that's interesting because like in a brand journey for the first word, we've got 4 pillars. We've got belief, belong, best, and beyond. But belief is everything. You know, belief gets people motivated. Belief is like, do you believe it first and foremost? And often that's why things fail, because you don't necessarily believe it, and people can see that. And then ultimately, then start to produce the evidence and making those decisions on the principle. So for me, if you're living life on purpose or you're aligned to purpose, life is better. That's an intrinsic belief.
But that because also makes it easier to push out the things that is just wasteful activities that keeps distracting you.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, when you know who you are, it's very easy to know who you're not.
Yeah.
So then you can say no. So it's like, well, because you haven't done that work, you're saying yes to everything. And so you're just doing 101 things. But the reality is you don't need to do 101 things. Yeah. Just do the thing that you really enjoy and build it. And listen, and this is where we fall into that passion purpose argument. It's like, it's not about, you can be passionate about something, but not very good at it, right? Yeah. But you can find your purpose and then become passionate about it. Yeah. And that's kind of what I talk
that's
about.
The things that, that's really wise. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And interesting about going back to sort of starting to build a picture and being really clear on what's the vision, where you're taking the company. And linking that, we talked about a success story. I was working with a business that where I did that, so it must have been 4 years ago, that exercise with the board.
Yeah.
And we took that into the next leadership team level, that refined and put a few sort of challenges to them, which just enhanced the picture. But literally, you had it on an A2 sheet. This is our vision. This is where we are today.
Yeah.
This is what our vision looks like. And this is some of the mechanisms. But it was all illustrated with few words here and there, some numbers here and there. But 3 years later, they got 6 or 7 figure investment from private equity.
Wow.
So it completely shifted the company. And one of the things, a couple of things that did it created really clarity is what sort of business is this we're trying to build?
Yeah.
What does it look like? It's been successful and growing very rapidly, but probably start to grow a little bit sort of uncertain. What exactly is it that we're doing? That was now crystal clear.
Yeah.
It wasn't complex. There wasn't many pictures in terms of what it would look like in the end, but some clear decision on what do we do and what don't we do.
Yeah.
And that's what made it very easy. And the CEO and owner of the business said it was very easy for me to convince the private equity companies, because it was very, very clear what we were doing. And 2 or 3 years down the line, they could see we were achieving it. So not only were we clear in what we wanted to do, we would also demonstrate we can stick to these plans. Yeah. So that was made it easy to get really, really big investment into the company. And that's now actually growing massively, because now got funding to start to buy other companies and bring all that knowledge in and grow.
And that for me is it. And I think for me, if you continually, as a leader, if you're continually communicating that vision, the story, where we want to go, where we want to head, and sometimes when you're in the weeds, like doing the stuff, like end of year accounts, oh my God, you're in the middle of that. It takes someone else to go, oh yeah, but you're doing it for this. So I'll give you an example. I was working on the podcast, and there was a lot going on, and dealing with people and trying to scale. And then one of my guys just reminded me, just while he was setting up the camera kit, it just goes, I thought you said you wanted to work in America. And I was like, yeah. But anyway, you're here to film the podcast. What are you doing, David? And he said, well, when are you going? Yeah. And I was like, ooh. And I remember him packing up and going, and it just stuck. Like the whole day I'm thinking, God, he's right, hey. When am I going to do that?
But it is, and it's an interesting one. And this is where coaching can come in, or even mentoring on long-term relationship is to hold you to account, because you don't get from the size of the business with say 10 million turnover to suddenly get many times that in a private equity investment, unless you sometimes have stumbles along the way and lose maybe belief along, but you are pulled back and you stick to it.
That's it.
And at the times when it's hard or when it's easier to make a choice, just stick to this. Yeah, but this is what you want to do. Is that still wrong? Is that wrong now? No, it isn't. Right. How do we make time, space, prioritize this so it happens?
But it's interesting because I'd met a group of guys in an entrepreneurial group online on the WhatsApp group, and then a lot of them are based in the US. And then I contacted one of them who kind of led the group, and he said, well, why don't you just come out? Yeah. So I spent 10 days in Loomis, which is down the road from Sacramento, California. And it was like, just looking at a different way of life and different people or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I was invited to be part of a Hungarian business group, which just seems the craziest thing. It's like, well what
That
is
seems
that?
sideways.
Yeah, where does that come? But it's amazing because I ended up speaking in the embassy in the UK, and then I thought they'd come, why don't you come over to Hungary? And I was like, oh, do I really need to go? All right, I'll go. So I went and I spoke there. Then I went downstairs and I was on the phone to Claire, my wife, and we were just chatting. I think it was something to do with Microsoft, of all mundane things. And I hung up, and this guy had been sat on the table, and he said, I saw you in the British Embassy in the UK, and I saw you here today. We want you as our branding agency. Mm-hmm. So then we get flown out to go back to Budapest to run this. Half the people in the room are from Denver in America.
Okay.
I was like, what? And then since then, clients, and it just began to open up.
It is funny how the stars align sometimes, because
exactly.
what happens, of course, is, and this probably just general human psychology, once you're sort of clear what you want to go, first of all, there's some opportunities here and there you say no to because it just didn't align. But there's also suddenly things start to appear in your vision that, oh, that might help me.
There you go.
Oh, I will still go for that. It might not be a direct line, but it's still getting me closer to it. I'm still building international presence. And that then sort of leads you
and
on.
it's like, so then friends of ours was like launching a network in Copenhagen, and it was like, would you like to come? And I was like, you know what, we need to go. And it was like less than 200 quid to get the tickets and the hotel, and we're just going to fly out from Bristol and fly back. But it's like, I'm now I see that, whereas before I didn't.
Yes.
I'm too busy. It's easy to say no to. Now I'm like, out of all the things I do, I need to do that one.
Yes.
Not because I want to do a jolly and go to Denmark, which I quite enjoy.
It's a nice place to go to. Definitely recommend it.
But it's what it represents. It's that constant, it's that constant, I'm thinking beyond the UK.
Yeah.
So why everybody is going, oh, they're just so terrible in the UK and no one's spending any money. And you can join that circle and join in, but it's not going to help you. Or you can start looking beyond these shores and say, well, you know what? Let's go have a look at the US, because not everybody is depressed in the US. There's 350 million people, right? Yeah. But if you go and take those risks, jump on those planes, go to those things, you don't know where it might take you. It goes back to our very first part of the conversation: is you end up talking to people, strangers that you've never met before, that could open doors that you would never have opened if you just stayed in the UK and moaned with all the moaners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So Jan, obviously you've been doing this now nearly 25 years, big thing. Are there any like fundamental lessons? Maybe give us a couple of lessons that stick with you that make a big difference. They may seem like, something that you've repeated lots, but you see a great impact with, that you could give the listeners.
Ooh, yeah. I've probably got quite a few. Now it's a question of selecting the right one.
Okay.
So let me, so for leaders.
Okay.
I think it's to recognize that leadership is a role in itself, and whatever technical expertise or the management side of it is not what makes you great leaders, a great leader. So what is a piece of advice? Start to recognize that that's a skill.
Yeah.
And then I can build a little bit deeper on that and saying, well, so what some of the skills that sits in that space are basic human skills that we think we can do because we've done it our whole life. So we can all listen, we can all ask questions. Yeah. Yes. But if you start to now think this is a fundamentally professional skill, I'm a leader, I'm here to talk to people, motivate people. I need to know how that works, what good looks like.
Yeah.
So what does good listening look like?
Yeah.
What questions are the right ones? Which are the ones that actually make an impact? Because once you start to get into that space of really know, this is about influence people for the right reason, and not some manipulation here, but you don't become the sort of charismatic, what's the right word? The leader that everybody notices by being the loudest in the room. You might be noticed at that point, but you probably also end up with, loudmouth. It's the one that asked the right question because they were observant. They listened to people around them. They took any advice and comments from it, picked it up, and then made an impact with maybe just one question.
Yeah.
Then there'll be plenty of other people who like to fill the airspace. Are you the one leader that makes a difference? So the one that asks the questions that suddenly make everybody think, oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then you shift the conversation, because that's what great leaders look like.
Great questions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great questions.
Great
Good listening. Really good listening.
Good listening. Great
Observing,
question.
see what's going on. So when you sit in a room in debate and discussion, in a team meeting, what are your focus? Is that on solving the problem that's in the room? Or is it to say, is this the right team? Are they solving the problem well? What's happening here?
It's an interesting one because I read something not so long ago and they were saying the same thing. It's like if you're in a room, like a boardroom or whatever, be the last to speak.
Yes.
Because you get all the information and then you start asking the right questions. And in an environment like that, ego kicks in and everyone wants to be the...
To show that they are interested and engaged and have opinions. And I work with boards and train boards and chairs of boards. And one of the things is exactly that I say to the chair, you must be the last one. Your job to speak. Your job isn't to be the one that comes with the answers.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, then you don't have a good enough board. You have to rely on all these non-execs and execs you have in the room. You're there to facilitate, make sure everybody contributes well, adds value. And then at the end, you may summarize.
Yeah.
But it's a big advantage as well because you don't need to think so hard.
Yeah.
You don't need to be so clever.
Yeah.
What you do is you pick up on the mood, where is it generally going, notice if people are not engaged, if the challenges aren't strong enough, if they're not really bashing this out well, that's what you notice.
Yeah.
And then at the end, as you pull together, of course, you should share your opinion if you have something at times, but be the last one because by that time, it's probably shared by a few others. And what you just do, rather than being the one that decide, you can pull it together. And now you have basically enhanced the whole process that the team is going through. And that will build and build and build.
So what does the next 25 years look like? Yeah.
Oh, I think so. 25 years, then we're definitely looking out into
we're definitely
some sort of semi-retirement for me.
Okay.
But I don't see myself retiring per se. In time, yes, of course.
Yeah.
But I have this lovely job where it can be a glide path. I can start to say, well, I won't work on Fridays, and generally that's what I do. I try certainly not to go out anywhere. I have meetings booked in, so Fridays is either I can do other things, go to the lakes and swim,
there you go,
or cycle or whatever it is. But sometimes I'll sit and do some admin. But it's just the day without incredible pressure. There will be times in the year where suddenly, we have a lot of work and it gets pulled back in. But on the whole, I try and do that, and that's the beauty of my career, that I can start to tail that off as the need for more money and earnings, of course, decreases over time, hopefully. But otherwise, I love what I'm doing. I really do. So I don't see myself changing it. I love coaching business leaders in small, medium business, senior executive in large organizations, very different sort of things that we work on there. I would love doing team coaching, working with team, developing leadership teams.
But I love that.
All of that is just what I love doing. So
why
would it change? The one shift I'm seeing and I'm trying towards is more professional speaking.
Okay.
And it has sort of the purpose of, well, if I can get the message out to even more people, have more impact, that would be great. And I would love some more traveling in that space. I think particularly COVID, and suddenly we're sitting a lot more at home. I do enjoy that I'm not traveling all the time. And I like the balance, but I do also like to come out and meet groups of people and network that way. So
I think,
which is probably way back to when a musician, isn't it?
Because that's the thing that you actually like.
And when a professional speaking is also entertainment fundamentally. I'm there to deliver a message. I hope they do something different afterwards. That's when it's delivered well. But fundamentally, they want an hour where they enjoy it. They enjoy listening. They get something out of it. They leave with something that will make a difference back in their workspace.
Yeah, and I think that for me, I like what you're saying in terms of, I'm not going to let this knowledge like disappear. I'm going to continually impact people. And I think for me, that's where leadership is that intrinsic, purposeful thing that you do. It's like, even if I'm 95 and I can still breathe, I'm going to pass something on to someone to make an impact. And I love that sort of mindset. So for me, you know, it's not a business. Yes, it is a business and you make money, but it's also inherently who you are as a person. You know, so you're always about impacting people, whether it's making them smile through playing music or making them smile to solve their problem that they find out themselves and think, hey, I solved this. I feel good about this. Then ultimately you're doing your job. So Jan, it's been amazing conversation. I could literally sit here for another hour.
Yeah, time flies, doesn't it?
Time flies, because I love talking leadership, and it's a fascinating subject, and people come at it from very different things. But just to thank you, Jan, for helping me at the very beginning of our journey.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
amazing, yeah.
But it's
great to see how far you come as well.
Yeah, and it's great to do a podcast. And I don't know, Jan, I think maybe you should do a podcast at some point. I think you'd be good at it. So
thank you. Well, maybe, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
maybe. We'll keep our eyes open. But thanks so much for joining us. How would people get in touch with you if they love what they've heard and say, you know what, I need to speak to this man? How would they get hold of you?
Well, the easiest probably LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So my name is the only one on LinkedIn, Jan Bowen-Nielsen. So that should be easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, quivermanagement.com.
Okay.
And I would say that's the two major ones. I'm on X as well, but I don't use it much, I must admit. So stick to LinkedIn. And then, of course, jan@quivermanagement.com is my email if anybody wants to contact me directly.
Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and we'll definitely have you back. So brilliant.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Darren.
Thank you so much for being part of the Purpose People podcast. You're listening to us on a regular basis helps us get the message out there that living life on purpose is the best possible life to live. How can you help us? Well, you can like and subscribe to us on YouTube, but you can also follow our podcast channels, which are on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify. Please keep supporting us. Please keep liking and sharing us. Please keep following us on social media. And you know what? We're inspiring more and more people to live life on their terms.